Okay. So have you ever like gotten that feeling? You know that feeling where it's like something bad's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
We're diving into that today.
Yeah.
It's apprehension.
Yeah.
And we've got some excerpts here from a piece called Conquering Apprehension, and we're going to unpack this a little.
Okay.
We're going to figure out why we expect the worst, and then most importantly, how do we stop it from like totally taking over our lives?
Right. Yeah.
So let's find out.
That's the big question, right? I mean, everyone, I think, has apprehension in some form or another.
Right.
But it's really interesting because apprehension, it's more than just sort of everyday nerves or anxieties.
Right.
It's like a deep-seated fear. Like something bad is looming in the future.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
All too well.
For sure.
I used to get like the worst stage fright
Oh, really?
before presentations.
Right.
And my mind would just like go into overdrive and just come up with all the worst case scenarios.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
Tripping on the way to the podium,
Mm-hmm.
forgetting like my entire speech.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And this piece is saying that kind of thinking is actually like a defense mechanism.
It is a defense mechanism, like a very primal one at that word.
Oh.
It's almost as if our brains are kind of stuck in survival mode,
Interesting.
constantly on the lookout for threats, right?
Yeah.
So like back in the day,
Yeah.
our ancestors, you know, they had to be like hyper aware of danger just to stay alive.
Right.
And so that worst case scenario thinking probably helped them like avoid predators
Oh, I see.
and, you know, other threats.
Yeah.
But like fast forward to today's world,
Right.
it can totally backfire.
Totally.
You know?
For
Yeah.
sure. So it's almost like our brain is like rehearsing for disaster.
Yeah, it's like a mental rehearsal for something bad we anticipate.
So how do we break free from that?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
We have to face our fears, but how?
Right, because this piece talks about the importance of facing our fears.
That's absolutely.
Head on.
Head on. But that's much easier said than done.
For sure.
But there are ways to do it right.
Yeah.
So one effective method is therapeutic exposure.
What is that?
You know, it's like dipping your toes in the water
Okay.
before like diving head first.
Yeah.
So let's say you're terrified of public speaking.
Yeah.
Right. Like you were saying.
Yeah.
Instead of starting with like a huge presentation,
Right.
you might practice talking in front of a small group of friends first.
Okay.
And then you gradually increase the audience size.
It's almost like we're training our brain to be like,
Exactly.
okay, this isn't so bad.
You're rewiring your brain.
Wow. That's fascinating.
It is.
But one thing that this article talks about
Yeah.
is the kind of the downside of constantly dwelling
Oh, yeah.
on negativity.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Well, you know, it's like if you're constantly thinking about the negative things, it's like a car that's stuck in neutral.
It's burning fuel, but it's not going anywhere.
It's just stuck.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just stuck.
Okay.
And all that worry and that dwelling can really drain our time and our energy.
Yeah.
And the source suggests something really interesting.
Okay.
They say to write down counter moves.
Counter moves.
These are practical steps that you could take
Ah.
if your fears actually do come true.
Okay.
So it's about like taking back control.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
So instead of feeling powerless, we're like
yeah.
taking charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of taking charge, there's this quote from Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
And the source mentions this too. He says, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear.
Wow.
What a powerful statement.
It's such a profound statement.
Yeah.
And it really applies beautifully to apprehension.
Ever so.
Because choosing to focus on the positive,
Yeah.
on what we can control,
Right.
that's a real mindset shift. So it's like changing our perspective.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
But what about those negative feelings?
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes they're just unavoidable.
Right.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, think of them as like warning signs,
Okay.
like a smoke detector. You know, it's a signal that something needs attention,
Okay.
not necessarily that like, you know, a fire is raging.
Right.
Right. So it's like, hey, pay attention. Something's up.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, catastrophe is imminent.
Oh.
And those negative emotions, they can actually guide us toward making positive changes.
It's like they have a purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not there just to make us feel bad.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, pay attention to this and maybe we can make a course correction.
Wow. So it's almost like they have a built-in intelligence.
Yeah.
Just like our bodies do.
Absolutely.
Like our hearts beat.
Yes.
We breathe.
Uh-huh.
All without conscious effort.
We don't even have to think about it.
Right. And it just works.
It just works.
It's amazing how resilient we are.
It's
The
incredible.
human body
Right.
is amazing.
And you know, the source uses this really interesting image
Okay.
to illustrate apprehension.
Okay.
It's a package sitting on a doorstep.
Okay.
And there's a nervous cartoon cat.
A chat.
Yeah, like peeking out from behind the curtain.
What do you think that image is trying to tell us?
Well, I think it speaks to that anticipation of the unknown and how we often jump to the worst case scenario.
I can see that.
You know, it's like that package could contain something wonderful.
Right.
But our apprehension keeps us hiding.
Behind that curtain.
Yeah, peeking out, afraid to really see what's there.
Like that cat.
Exactly.
Wow. So it seems like the main point here is that apprehension is a natural part of being human.
It is.
But we don't have to let it control us.
We don't.
Right.
We have a choice.
So by understanding its purpose,
Mm-hmm.
facing our fears,
Right.
and choosing to focus on what we can control.
Exactly.
We can manage all of those worries.
Yeah.
And just like live more fully.
Yeah, live a richer life, for sure.
Yeah, and not be controlled by it.
Absolutely. I encourage everyone listening to think about like one specific worry that you're facing right now.
Okay.
And think about how can you apply these insights?
Yeah.
Because remember, you have more agency than you think.
If you realize.
Yes.
Very good point.
Thank you.
Awesome.
This was a great discussion.
Yeah, it was great.
Really enjoyed it.
I'm glad we dove into this topic.
Me too.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Bye.